Your genetic predispositions are being sold to you as the ultimate shortcut to fitness and nutrition mastery. But what if that promise is not just exaggerated, but dangerously misleading? You've probably heard it before. Your DNA holds the secret to your perfect diet and workout plan. A simple cheek swab, a glossy report, and suddenly the guesswork is gone. Eat this. Avoid that. Train this way. Transform your body. But what if that 23andMe style promise is built on a fiction that can quietly sabotage your health goals? Imagine spending hundreds of dollars on genetic testing for personalized nutrition and fitness. Optimization analyzing your genome for ideal macronutrient ratios and exercise protocols, only to discover that your genetic blueprint matters far less than the marketing claims suggest. This isn't just about wasted money. It's about the dangerous myth that your genes predetermine your dietary success or fitness potential, when the real science tells a very different story. Right now, companies are flooding the market with DNA diet tests and genetic fitness assessments, promising to decode your nutritional needs through Nutrigenomics and exercise genetics. They claim they can tell you whether you're a carb responder or a fat responder, whether your body needs high-intensity intervals or endurance, training all based on a handful of gene variants that supposedly define your metabolic destiny. The appeal is obvious. Who wouldn't want a personalized health blueprint that removes all uncertainty from weight loss and muscle building? You mail in a cheek swab. Weeks later, you receive a polished report spelling out exactly what to eat, macros to hit, and how to train, framed as if it's all written into your DNA. And the science sounds legitimate. We know genes influence lactose tolerance, muscle fiber composition, even appetite regulation. Nutritional genomics has identified hundreds of genetic variants associated with metabolism and athletic performance. But here's where things get uncomfortable. When researchers actually tested whether matching diets to DNA improves real-world outcomes, the entire foundation of the personalized nutrition industry started too. Collapsed. Stanford University launched an $8 million study, one of the most rigorous investigations ever conducted on DNA-based diet matching. Over 600 overweight adults were genotyped for the very variants companies claim predict success on low-carb versus low-fat diets. Participants were then assigned either the diet that supposedly matched their genetics or the exact opposite. After 12 months of careful tracking, the expectation was clear. Genetically matched diets should dominate. They didn't. Both groups lost nearly identical amounts of weight. No meaningful differences in body fat, waist circumference, or metabolic health. The genetic advantage simply wasn't there. What makes this even more damning is that the lead researcher, Christopher Gartner, had previously published a smaller study suggesting genetic matching did work. But when he ran this larger, better controlled trial, he couldn't replicate his own findings. His conclusion was blunt. The DNA matching approach didn't work. Not even close. This wasn't a fringe experiment. It was gold standard, science randomized, controlled. Large scale, and it completely failed. To support the idea that knowing your genetic variants helps you choose a better diet, you might think, okay, maybe nutrition genetics are flawed, but fitness genetics must be different. The reality is more nuanced. Yes, people respond differently to the same exercise programs. Some improve their VO2 max dramatically, others barely at all. Twin studies confirm genetics play a role, but this is where genetic testing companies quietly cross the line. Response variability does not mean your genes lock you into a single optimal training style. In fact, research shows that so-called non-responders to one type of exercise often become strong responders when they switch modalities. If steady-state cardio doesn't work for you, high-intensity intervals might. If aerobic training stalls, resistance training can still drive major cardiovascular gains through entirely different different logical pathways. Your genes may influence tendencies and predispositions, But they do not sentence you to a fixed outcome. The real signal is adaptability, not destiny. No current genetic test can predict the exact mix of volume, intensity, and modality that will unlock your best results, because the interactions are far too complex. And that's the truth the DNA testing industry doesn't want you to hear. Here's the midpoint revelation that flips the entire genetic obesity narrative on its head, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. For years, we've been told that genetic predisposition to obesity is destiny. That if you drew the short genetic straw, weight gain and metabolic disease are almost inevitable. And to be fair, part of that story is true. When researchers analyzed data from two massive long-term studies, the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals' Follow-Up Study, tracking tens of thousands of people over decades, they found exactly what you'd expect. People with higher genetic risk did gain more weight over time so far. Nothing shocking, but then the researchers asked a far more dangerous question. Dangerous for genetic determinism. At least not what happens when people change their diet quality. That's where everything breaks. When participants improve their adherence to healthy dietary patterns, things like Mediterranean-style eating or the DASH diet, the genetic link to weight gain weakened dramatically. In other words, better diet quality didn't just help a little. It actively counteracted genetic risk. And here's the part no genetic testing company wants in bold letters. The protective effect was strongest in the people with the highest genetic risk. The individuals most predisposed to obesity benefited the most from improving their diet. Let that sink in. Your genes may load. The gun but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And paradoxically, lifestyle interventions work best in the people dealt the worst. Genetic cards, that single finding shatters the core marketing promise of DNA-based diet testing. These companies want you to believe you need hyper-specific genetic recommendations to overcome your biology. But the data says the opposite. Adherence to any evidence-based healthy eating pattern delivers the biggest payoff precisely when genetics are stacked against you. No expensive genetic testing required. And this leads to an uncomfortable truth. Behavior change predicts success far more powerfully than genetic optimization ever has. When researchers looked at direct-to-consumer genetic testing for weight loss, they found a consistent pattern. People paid for DNA-based diet advice and then didn't follow it. Not because the advice was bad, but because changing eating habits is hard. Whether the recommendation comes from a gene report or a nutrition textbook. Meanwhile, people working with qualified nutrition professionals often do better. Why? Because those experts address the real drivers of behavior: medical history, preferences, culture, stress, routines, and obstacles. None of that lives in your DNA. The largest randomized trial of personalized nutrition to date, the Food for Me study with over 1,600 participants, tested this directly. Researchers compared generic advice against three increasingly personalized approaches. Diet data alone, diet plus phenotype like blood markers, and diet plus phenotype plus genotype. All personalized approaches worked better than generic advice, but adding genetic data, it didn't improve results at all. Genetics explained maybe 5 to 10% of the variation in weight loss response. Sleep, stress, food environment, emotional eating, social support, and above all, adherence explained far more. So why does the genetic testing industry still thrive? Because DNA recommendations feel more scientific. They tap into a powerful cognitive bias. People perceive genetic advice as more precise, more authoritative, more motivating. And sometimes, that belief alone boosts motivation. But that's not genetic optimization. That's a placebo. Effect of personalization. Worse, many direct-to-consumer genetic tests rely on poorly validated gene variants, questionable interpretations, and recommendation engines that lack strong scientific backing. The space is lightly regulated, so companies lean on scientific language, glossy reports, and impressive advisory boards, often without real expertise in nutrigenomics or clinical validation. You're not buying precision medicine, you're often buying pseudoscience in a lab coat. And the real irony, what actually works is far less futuristic and far more effective, consistent adherence to evidence-based dietary patterns, exercise you enjoy enough to repeat, adequate sleep, stress management, supportive environments, and systematic self-experimentation over time. Genetic tests may eventually become useful as the science matures, but right now they're mostly expensive distractions from the fundamentals that drive results. Regardless of what your genes say, the real truth is this: your DNA influences your health and fitness, but it does not dictate your destiny. What you eat, how you move, how consistently you show up, those daily choices matter exponentially more than any single genetic variant you inherited. Yet genetic testing companies thrive by selling you a contradiction so clever you barely notice it. They tell you your genes make success impossible without their test, while simultaneously promising genetic optimization if you buy it. Helpless without them, empowered because of them. It's brilliant marketing and deeply misleading. That $8 million Stanford study should have been the end of the story. It showed that matching diets to DNA doesn't improve weight loss. Full stop. But instead of questioning the premise, the industry pivoted. New genes, more complex algorithms, even more personalization. Not because the evidence changed, but because the business model demanded it. Here's what the data keeps showing. Over and over again, diet quality, consistency, and adherence crush genetic matching every time. The boring fundamentals outperform the flashy promises. Your genetic blueprint matters far less than what you build with it. Real optimization doesn't come from decoding your genome in search of the perfect macro ratio or the mythical ideal training split. With our current understanding of nutrigenomics and exercise genetics, that level of precision simply doesn't exist in a meaningful, actionable way. What does exist is something far more powerful, proven principles executed consistently over time. And that's the uncomfortable truth behind the DNA fitness hype. There's no shortcut hidden in your genes, just effort, experimentation, and habits that compound. So, if this myth doesn't hold up under the microscope, what myth should we break next?